You're listening to Redesigning Reality with Dylan Charles and Jeff Anthony.
Record. I'm recording.
2, 1, and we go.
We're good. We're going. This is Redesigning Reality, the podcast. I'm Dylan Charles, talking to Jeff Anthony as always. What's happening, Jeff?
Not a lot, Dylan. Just hanging out here, enjoying the day. It's a super nice day. The weather's awesome right now, huh? I love fall.
Yeah, you're talking at us from Eugene, Oregon, West Coast. Me, I'm here in Asheville, North Carolina, East Coast, like spanning the continent, coast to coast. That's where it's at.
There you go.
Yeah,
coast to coast.
Jeff and I, we each have our own chihuahuas. Mine's sitting right here scratching.
Mine's on lockdown, so he doesn't bark in the middle of our podcast here.
Mine's on lockdown. I have to lock mine down here in the studio with me, because if not, like, she does the chihuahua thing and scratches at the door or barks at the window or all that kind of good stuff. So
sure.
Yeah, this is officially episode number 2 of our excellent podcast. And Jeff and I here. Jeff's an author. He's written an awesome book. I'm gonna pimp your book again. Cosmic Wizard: A Journey from Outer Rage to Inner Sage. Excellent book. Pick it up on Amazon today. Me, I'm the editor, founder, aggregator, chief content creator dude of wakingtimes.com. And let's check that out, wakingtimes.com. I like to think of it as a place on the web where revolution and evolution collide. So
that's a great tagline, and I would agree with that. Evolution and revolution collide. I like it.
Yeah.
And it's very accurate. There's really a lot of awesome content there, and some really amazing writers that you've put together there. And I think it's very eye-opening and awakening for the people that find themselves on the site.
I have explored, and I've spent hours like brainstorming and idea generating and all this and that, different taglines or mission statements or whatever for the project. And that one was like the first one ever that popped into my head, and that's the only one that really makes sense to me. And I think the reason why is because the site, although it's not explicitly about myself, it's about the world, it's about other people, it's about personal transformation, it's about taking a look at what's maybe not so good in this crazy ass world. But that subtitle there really kind of sums up my personal story, right? Evolution and revolution. I went through a phase where I felt like I was, learning and revolting about, learning about how the world really works, and then kind of set off and revolt against that in a number of different ways. And we can get into those. And then ultimately that catalyzed and sort of triggered my own personal evolution, like, an awakening process that ultimately led me to be like healthy, happy, and just awesome, really, like my man Jeff here.
Just awesome, really. I like that one. You're so awesome, Dylan.
Tell me about it. No, it's
true though. I the thing I like about Waking Times, seriously, is there's a balance. It's just like it is a. Well, you're the personification of the site, right? So, and you have good and bad in you. I mean, you have happy thoughts and sad thoughts, and we all do. We all have the light and the dark, and that's what I think is so interesting about the site. It's not all fluff. It's not all good news just for the sake of good news. It's reality, and you address a lot of things, but you kind of steer people in the direction of solutions, which is what I really like.
Yeah, and it's tough, because things have changed a lot in the news world in the last few years. I mean, you have like the dinosaur mainstream media just, collapsing under its own hubris and arrogance. You have the explosion of the web. WordPress made it possible for freaking anybody to set up a blog. So you have like the whole spectrum of news and information is available at your fingertips, and it ranges, I mean, yin and yang, like infinitely. Like the spectrum of quality, the spectrum of the type of information, the spectrum of truth. You've heard about the whole fake news thing. I mean, like there's a person can go anywhere and find any of the information that they want, and everything's good, everything's bad. But I see some trends here that I think are kind of they're telling, right? You know, you see this whole thing going down with the NFL and the take a knee protests, and everybody's got an opinion, and the president's chiming in, being a jerk, and, you know, like, it's just like, it's not pretty. But, you know, part of that is, like, I think people finally have people are finally able to create their own echo chambers, you know, their own, like, group think boxes.
Right.
And, that's comforting, man. It's really comforting to sit inside your box, to sit inside a place where you know you're going to be reaffirmed, you know you're going to be reassured, you know you're going to be welcomed, you know your ideas aren't going to be criticized. It's fun to sit there, and then, you know, once in a while it's kind of adventuresome to step outside the box and, you know, thrash out on other people for what they're thinking and what they're believing. And I really like with Waking Times, you know, not that this episode is all about Waking Times, but with the site, like, I really tried to you know, surf in between the polarization of everything, man. It's just
Right.
too much,
you
man.
Take it all in, kind of, you know, theory on that. I agree with that. I think if you try to build a wall, no pun intended, but if you try to build a wall or you try to push things out, those are the things that are going to knock you down the hardest, you know. And, you know, maybe when Trump said the owners should fire those sons of bitches, he had to say, because, you know, he was mad everybody was taking his line from him, because everybody has been saying we should fire that son of a bitch from being president. So it's pretty funny. Well, you know.
Did you actually see, like, the clip of him saying that? Because I thought what I caught in that was that it seemed like he set that up so he could drop on the podium for the first time ever his famous "you're fired" line from.
No, I think so too. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because he said it like twice, like real fast. He was like, "You're fired." Then he's like, "Oh wait, you're fired!" Boom!
Yeah.
It's like
I think he was mad. People were stealing his thunder, and he had to show him how it was done. He's the apprentice.
I don't know, man.
It's a pretty hilarious. Like, you know, but this is what you get. You know, I mean, people can sit and point their finger and blame, but when you vote a reality star into the presidency, and then they're like, you know, I thought he was going to act more presidential. I was like, well, you didn't vote for him because he was acting presidential. You voted for him because he was acting wackadoo. So
Here's what I think, man. I think, fuck all that, man. You know, like, none of that shit really matters, you know, because if you just turn the fucking TV off, if you just, like, you know, close your browser window of MSNBC or CNN or Fox, if you just close that shit, you'll realize real quickly that none of it fucking matters to what's actually happened in your life at the moment. You know, like, none of it matters.
Absolutely not. And that's the best thing that ever happened to my family and I when we moved to Costa Rica, you know, was no television. You know, just turn the shit off and form your own opinions about life and your experience. You know, it was like moving here to Oregon. I moved here on Inauguration Day. I flew out of Costa Rica to Oregon on Inauguration Day, and all these people are, you know, out of their minds about Donald Trump and all this. And I'm like, hey man, like, I'm looking for a house. I'm trying to get my kids into a good school. And I understand that his choices can, you know, damage the worldview of the United States, but I'm not the United States. Yeah, I'm just Jeff, you know, and I can still have an awesome life. I've continued having an awesome life, and amazing things are happening to me because I don't sit and, you know,
Facebook
contemplate people. Yeah, and I'm not ashamed, you know, like when people are like, I'm ashamed to be an American on Facebook and stuff. I think that's sad, man. I'm not ashamed to be anything, you know.
Bro, let me say one word here.
Yeah.
Fear, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, because check it. Like, so many people have said to me after moving back here, because hey, podcast audience, you're getting to know Jeff and I. We lived in Costa Rica. Jeff for 10 years, myself for 7 years, with our families and kids and all that kind of stuff. And we both, about the same time after being there for an awesome, almost decade for me, you know, decided that it would be lots of fun to move back to the United States. Lots of cool things to do with the kids. Lots of new things like, you know, fall and winter and snow and fireplaces and, you know, all kinds of great reasons, man. Basically, we just moved back here to have fun and to explore new experiences with our kids, and, you know, like a reaction with our families, and a big reaction from so many people is, oh my God, you know, like, you came back just as you know, Trump's just starting and this and that. And first off, if you really want to get down to it, like the problems that we have with the nation, with everything, go way beyond Trump. But second of all,
Right.
what really is going on here? You have people that are really afraid of all these external circumstances, you know, and
Right.
that's something that I really truly. It's one of those things, man. Fear of like. All right, let's just throw this out there. Teotihuacan, the end of the world as we know it, you know, like, you know, fear of the worst possible thing happening, you know, nuclear war, you know, some released bioweapon that kills off 98% of the population,
Right.
total economic collapse, martial law, FEMA camp takeovers, everything like that. All that kind of stuff. You can really get caught up in all that. And I sense that with so many people and that's one of the things that drove me to get out of the U.S. and take a break for a while and explore, you know, life outside of the U.S. was because I realized that all that stuff was weighing me down. Poof.
Absolutely.
It's gone now for me personally, but I know what I had to do to deal with it, to get over it, to move beyond it, and you know, when we decided to move back after being in Costa Rica for 7 years, man.
Yeah.
When we decided to move back to the U.S., that was literally like that was what, June or something of last year. So it was like you had Trump was almost the nominee. I literally decided to move back. A week later, the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting happened. Then later that week was the my daughter just walked in going, "Hello,
Hello.
Yeah. Welcome to the real
Yes,
world."
Dylan
of
has
podcasting.
children too, and so do I. It's all good. It's all good. So, you know, yeah, I'm with you. There was all kinds of things going on right when we were moving too. I remember you called and said you guys were going to move to back to the States and seeking out some different stuff to do and education opportunities for the kids. And we were right in the middle of looking at universities for my oldest son to go to in Costa Rica. And he was feeling a draw to go to university there. And then we went and visited, and he wasn't, you know, it wasn't what he thought, and it didn't fit what he wanted to do as far as his major. So he decided he wanted to go to college up here in Oregon. So we did everything we could to make that happen for him, you know, and it's been a great experience, you know.
Yeah. It's Jeff and I are real. This show is real. It's really real. We got chihuahuas. We got kids. That was my daughter. She just got home from school. She's supposed to be at cross country practice, but apparently there's no cross country practice today, and so she's busted in here. When we decided to move back, right? I was all up in there. It felt like the right thing to do. I was following my gut. I was listening to my intuition. I was like looking for synchronicities, and all of a sudden, boom! All these, you know. You get the sense that the universe is like opening doors and closing doors as needed to lead you in the direction that you're supposed to go. And I was like, this is where I'm supposed to go. Like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then bam, the Orlando Pulse nightclub. Who wants to live in the U.S. when there's stuff like that going on, you know?
Right.
And so it just so happened that I had scheduled like that week, like a week after the Pulse nightclub, I had scheduled, and also it was the Ferguson riots too. Like the, is it Ferguson, right? Missouri or whatever, I forget, but
I think so.
Do you remember the riots, you know, and like the cops rolled up with their machine guns on everybody and started LRADing neighborhoods and like
right.
You know,
Good
basically
stuff.
like the worst possible thing that you can imagine if happening in a free country. But anyways, supposedly free country. That's another episode. And so I went and I had scheduled already to journey with Iboga. Now. For those of you who don't know, iboga is a shamanic plant medicine from Africa. It's the root bark. There's this little shrub that grows in the like western equatorial rainforest of Africa, and the substance, like it's a psychedelic, hallucinogenic, entheogenic substance, and it comes straight from the plant. You literally pull the roots out of the plant, or the roots up from the plant, scrape off the bark of the roots, and eat it, and off you go on this intense psycho-spiritual, life-revealing, time dimension warping journey, right? And I've done this a number of times. It's kind of something I like to do.
Something I like to do. You know, when I got nothing else going on, I just go on iboga journeys.
So and I went to visit my iboga friends, you know, like awesome. Shout out to Gary Cook and Iboga Wellness, Anthony Esposito, all those rad dudes. And so like I start journeying, like we do the whole Bwiti traditional fire ceremony and start dosing up on iboga, and medicine hits me and I lay there and instantly like within like just like a short while, what happens with iboga, right, is you lay down, basically put a blindfold over your eyes, you're listening to this crazy Bwiti music. In fact, that's the music that we're using for our podcast at the intro and the outro of our podcast. That's Bwiti music. Talk about that more some other time, but literally like a movie screen opens up in front of your eyes when your eyes are closed. It feels like your pineal gland, your third eye opens wide up and you can see the entire universe. And powerful journey. Like people go into it and they end up like holding conference with their own soul and like meeting and like visiting with like deceased ancestors and relatives and stuff. It's powerful stuff. But to get to the relevant point here, I immediately, Jeff, I launched into Pulse nightclub, and I was at Pulse nightclub for 6-8 hours. I was like tripping, journeying on iboga, listening to this crazy music, and I was in my mind, I was seeing everything in Pulse nightclub, and I was there, and I was like, you really feel like you're going through this experience. And I can't say that it was a bad trip, because I love like the exploration of the both the dark sides of the psyche and also the light sides of the psyche, and I really
right. It's all necessary.
Absolutely, man. I really think like the greatest healing comes when you really dive into where like the pain, the suffering, the darkness, the evil shit lives, That's your best opportunity to see just how far you can go, to be in in the other direction, just how much love and light you can bring into the world. And so what I realized, I went to this journey, and the whole time I was tripping in the Orlando Pulse nightclub, watching people get shot and scream, and watching the SWAT team blow holes in the walls and come in and clean up. It was brutal, man. It was really, really unsettling. And then I went and I was like, okay, am I doing the right thing with my family moving? And I had this vision of what it was going to be like moving to the States, and it was like all of a sudden, as soon as I got here, Donald Trump got elected, and like half the nation revolted or like went up in arms, and cities were being burned down, and like martial law declared, and like the street that we moved to was like locked down with MRAP or whatever they're called, like the armored personnel vehicles at both sides of this street, and it was like pretty much like the worst case scenario. I think the way I described it, Jeff, was semi-automatic worst case scenario generator. There's something more to it than that, but
nice.
But what I realized, the good that came out of all this, right? Like why that's valuable, why an experience like that can be so valuable. So what I realized was that I had created in my mind all these anxieties and fears, right? I had without even realizing it, totally subconscious, by consuming information, by listening to other people's fears, by basically picking up vibes from other people and from other sources. I realized that I had created in my mind something terrible, right?
Like the boogeyman exists in your mind. Absolutely.
The boogeyman exists. The boogeyman's there. He's coming to get me. He's going to get my kids. He's going to get me. Time to get locked and loaded.
Which is the funny, as you talked about fear. I remember a long time ago, I was in a sales meeting of all places, but this guy was like, fear is an acronym, and it stands for false evidence appearing real. And man, that's something that I don't remember anything else from the meeting, but I remember that. And I've always found that, if you can step through fear, the false evidence that appears real in front of you, it's never what you thought it was going to be. It's like projecting in your mind what an event is going to be with your family or friends or a concert, and then you go and the concert's either way better or way worse than you ever could have projected it to be. And yet we forget that when we're in that fear-based mind, when we're thinking negatively, Yeah,
and that's precisely what I went through in this experience with coping with the anxiety of moving, uprooting my whole family, going to a place that I'd never been before. We're moving to North Carolina. I'd never even been here, and so the gift of shamanic medicines is infinite, really. But in this particular case, it really allowed me to see, man, that I was like building these false evidence, putting together these pieces of false evidence and creating false realities in my mind. And so the takeaway from it was when I came down and sort of broke through all that. I ended up like breaking through to a place of like loving energy, and was able to ask this medicine, the spirit of this medicine, am I going to be okay? Am I making the right decision? And the answer was, yeah, you're wherever you go, whatever you do, you're going to be protected. Enjoy yourself, live a happy life. Now,
Right.
the benefit of that is like, you come to the next day and like, you don't even realize how much the anxiety was affecting you physically and mentally, how much it was holding you back, how much it was coloring like, your thoughts, the things that you say to people, the things that you focus on. And so getting like just relieving all that anxiety by taking a serious close-up look at it is, it's truly a gift,
Absolutely. And I think the coolest part about this podcast for our listeners is, we're not we're not putting up some fake Facebook life, with the perfect selfie and the perfect picture, and Dylan and I have it all figured out, and we don't have anxiety anymore, and we don't get stressed out, and our life is so perfect. That's bullshit. Nobody's life is. None of these gurus and woohoos and I know it alls. They're all. It's false advertising, and everybody's got issues. Everybody has problems, everybody's family members get sick and die just like ours do. And we all get to deal with that. You and I both, right after we moved here, which was really funny. Part of my intuition and calling to come back to the States was that I knew things were about to happen with my personal family, and I wanted to be here. And man, it didn't take long. I guess I was here for 4 months, and my only grandmother passed away at 92 years old, and super important, super special lady in my life. And I want to say your grandmother passed away, same kind of inspiration in your life, maybe 2 weeks before mine, right?
Yeah. Jeff and I have a lot of things in common, and one of them is these bizarre like parallels that we're on. But yeah, one of them is as soon as we moved back to the States, both of our beloved mine was 93 grandmother died, and if I was still out of the United States, I wouldn't have been able to bring my whole kids in for time with the family, which was so awesome.
Right. Same here. Exactly the same situation. And I got to speak at her memorial service. I actually closed the service down, and probably one of the most difficult speaking engagements of my life. But also one of the most enriching experiences of my life, to see my whole family gathered and just to, it was really awesome. Nobody was wallowing in the sadness. It was all about telling stories and sharing sharing the loving experience that my grandmother brought to our family. Yeah,
definitely for us it was felt more like a celebration of her life.
Yeah.
But so the fear, man, the fear. You had mentioned prior to this you wanted to talk about fear a little bit, and it kind of came up already with this whole notion of people like want to know what the hell you want to be doing in the United States. Like people are afraid to be here in the United States.
Right.
Let me just say this outright. Like any of the bad things that I mentioned, they're all possible. Right? Mm-hmm. Any of them could maybe possibly happen any day. So
anywhere,
any day. Anything could change for the worse. Take a 180 degree turn.
Right.
So any of that stuff that you get fixated on is all absolutely possible. So you're not crazy. You're not crazy for worrying about this stuff.
Right. It's human nature, and you should, self-preservation is like one of our innate inborn abilities. And, we live in such a box here in the States that people don't think about. I mean, Dylan, we could have a whole podcast about volcanoes going off and the airports being shut down, and it's the end of the world in Costa Rica, and very few of my family members or friends even knew that stuff was going on, and earthquakes and all these things. There's all these things that you can be afraid of, and you can not live your life and not carry out your dream because you live in fear. Or you can do this adventure-based, risk versus reward type of living. And I think that's another thing that you and I have in common. I dove. Just like you, I dove right back into this experience here. I'd never even been to Oregon. I didn't know anything about it other than the schools that my son was interested in had the programs that he was wanting to study, and they were very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Excellent.
Very high quality education, and
Right.
Places that were going to give him the opportunities that my wife and I wanted to provide for him in the future. So instead of being afraid of any of it, we just the economy is going to crash tomorrow. Yeah, well, the economy is going to crash tomorrow for the last 10 years. So I'm not in control of that. All I can do is live my life, pursue the adventure, and do the things. I've done so many things in my personal life that people that don't have walkers or don't have wheelchairs and don't deal with the things that I deal with are afraid to do. And the thing that I draw off of from that is I love inspiring people. When they see me in my situation, I realize that it speaks to them on levels that a lot of other people can't speak to them on.
I think it's maybe more helpful, in my case at least, like, reflecting back, like, I don't ever remember confronting fear or making a conscious decision to overcome fear to do any of the things that I've done that have, been turned out to been things that I clearly was meant to be doing, But I think what I see more of is like paying attention to a process of like personal development, spiritual growth, and learning to recognize like the things happen in your own inner world and recognize the directions that you're being pulled or pushed into, and then learning how to respect those enough to act upon them. You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool, I'm being called to do this. I can tell. Great example, right? I lived in Austin, Texas for 32 years. I was born there. I lived there for 32 years. For the first 10 plus years before I left Austin, I had wanted to leave Austin, Right. It wasn't necessarily that one day I woke up and said, I'm overcoming the fear of leaving Austin, whatever it is, finding a new job, being able to afford living somewhere else cooler, or whatever. I never really overcame that fear. I just had, what finally made it possible for me was that I was going through a very intense process of personal awakening. I was taking in a lot of different philosophies. I was, experimenting with different, metaphysical, esoteric practices, things like qigong, meditations, all this kind of stuff, and I was becoming more and more deeply aware of who I am and what I'm going through, and what my feelings mean to me, and how I'm supposed to respond to those feelings. In the last podcast, I talked about the experience of going to the shrink and him trying to put me on 7 different pills a day when I was like 26 years old, and then me basically saying, "Yeah, no thanks, doc." What happened after that was I started trying really hard, basically, trying.
Right. And I, it's funny because that was the beginning, right? Sometimes these experiences that people view as negative, those are the ones that open your eyes, or bust the door open. And it sounds about right, like here you were 27, 5 years later when you're 32, you make the move, and the seed was planted the day the pills were planted in the bottle, in the bag. Well, so it's kind of funny.
The seed had been there for, some amount of years. Like I had, this feeling like I was in a cage, like I was in a box, like I didn't belong where I was, and
right.
Like I just didn't really fit in, even though like I should have fit in. I'm from there. I've lived there my whole life. I should fit in pretty damn well, but something that was changing inside of me. And so what I learned was over 4, 5, 6 years of really trying to be a better person. What I learned was that when someone changes themselves on the inside, it has the effect of changing their relationships with everybody, right? So, and what I was feeling was this deep friction between, people like my boss and mentor who I'd worked with for, 7, 8 years or something. Love the guy, great guy, still friends with him, but just kind of outgrowing that relationship. Friends that I'd hung out with since high school, this and that, and just finally realizing that, okay, I'm not the same person that I was, but they're the same people that they were, and I just don't fit in here anymore. And so it wasn't, like I said, like necessarily like about consciously overcoming the fear, but more about becoming more consciously aware of who I am and where I'm supposed to be. And then, it took courage to follow along that path, but it didn't feel like courage at the time. It just felt like I don't have any other choice. I got to go do this.
Right. And, I would say the exact same thing happened to Aaron and I. Dagan, our oldest son, who's in college now here, was 3 when Aaron and I started getting that weird feeling that, something needed to change. We weren't fitting in as much as we had before. And same exact thing you're talking about. We were changing. Our friends were kind of staying the same. And the difference between us, I think, and a lot of other people is I think everyone feels that tug. Everyone gets that call to action, but not everyone takes it. Not everyone responds to it or answers the call, as they say. And we were in a place where we were ready, and we didn't have the solutions. We didn't have the answers. We didn't know how it was all going to work, but we were both on board, and we were both together in our desire to break it up and do something completely different, and build a new life and find a new place to fit in or not fit in, like, I don't know, like, I think, to touch more on the thing we were saying earlier about being Americans and people being ashamed of being American. If you go back to Costa Rica right now, to the little tiny village that I lived in, nobody says, "Oh, remember that American guy, Jeff?" I know, because my wife was just there. She was like, "Man, our neighbor said everybody's always talking about you." And they're like, "Man, I miss that guy, Jeff. He was so cool. He was so nice. He was so open and understanding. He was just a good person." And that's what you can be no matter where you are. You can be a good person. You can be open. You can learn another culture and language. Which was why these people, I endeared myself to them, because I learned their language. I participated in their culture, and I shared my life with them,
Yeah, I totally know. I just went and visited Costa Rica myself a couple months ago, and I went back to the town I lived in and went to my old dentist and saw my nanny and friends, and a bunch of good people.
Excellent people, yeah.
And now I'm here. I'm doing it all over again. I'm starting all over, and it's exciting. It is kind of exciting.
It is,
yeah.
And the whole thing we were kind of touching on earlier, the whole risk versus reward thing. Man, I have so many awesome, rewarding experiences and things that I can talk about now and write books about, because I took the risk on myself. I took the risk on life. I rolled the dice. I showed my hand. I played the cards I was dealt. All those analogies are all accurate and true. And in the end, it was all worth it. The experiences I had, the good and bad, and believe me, lots of bad happened. But it was part of the awakening. It opened my eyes. And, it let me know that no matter how low, no matter how bad it gets, you can always turn to, a higher experience through shamanism, meditation, whatever those things are for you. Iboga, ayahuasca. There's all these avenues to explore. But ultimately, the healer lies in you, and I learned that in Costa Rica. I learned that by moving here, that my youngest son was crying and upset like the week before we moved, and he was laying in the bed with my wife and I, and he's a little 8-year-old guy, kind of a fragile little guy at that age, personality wise, and just a big, giant open heart. And I told him, I'm going to miss this house too. I mean, we built this house, we built a life here, but the coolest thing about this, and the thing you fear the most, is the thing we won't lose, is we take all of this with us. This family goes with us, this love, this connection that you feel, the belonging, it all goes with us, because we're going to be together there, and we're going to do it all over again, and it'll be fun. It'll be an adventure, and it's already unfolding in the most amazing ways,
My a friend of mine who's a Bwiti shaman in training, I guess. He's an older gentleman who's been working with 10th generation Bwiti shaman from Africa for many years now. And one thing I really like about the Bwiti tradition, that, they work with the spiritual medicine at Boga, but one thing I really like about the tradition is the philosophy. It's so simple, man. Like, the philosophy is just, it's about how to be happy. There's a whole lot to it, but there's not much to it. Like, it's really, really simplified. They talk about fear. Like, we do these fire ceremonies and we sit around the fire and we talk about different aspects of life. Fear, control, happiness, your thoughts, what goes on in your mind, just what do we need to know to be happy? What should we care about? What should we not care about? That sort of thing. But regarding fear, Gary, my friend, likes to ask people around the fire, well, what is fear? So, Jeff, what is fear? Is it something that you could see? Can you see it, Jeff?
No.
You can't see it. Does it have like a smell or an odor?
No.
Okay, is it something that has a particular color all the time or looks a certain way?
Absolutely not.
No, so it's some sort of abstract concept or construct that we can't even really define, right?
Right, but then we allow that abstract, realm to limit our experiences,
Right.
Based on the unseen, based on the untasted, the untested, the unheard. And I mean, in some ways, okay, come on. You drive home and your house is on fire. You can see and smell and hear the crackle. I mean,
That's real.
That's real. That's a time to be in self-preservation. Make sure that you have your pets and your children in a safe place.
Well,
we're not being I just want people to understand. You and we're not being illogical.
No.
But to imagine fear is the thing that I think. Go ahead.
Listen. Thank you for that, Jeff. Listen. Okay, he goes on. He talks about the two types of fear, right? There's fear,
right?
The stuff that we were just talking about, but there's also caution, right? That's what you're talking about when you're talking about going home and realizing that you need to get your fishbowl out of the kid's bedroom before it all burns down. Like you're walking on a mountain trail and you don't want to get too close to the cliff's edge because you're being cautious, like your instinctual drive to avoid disaster, right?
Right.
So there is fear and caution, but what's cool about the Bwiti philosophy is that it's so logical. Like it's basically just like it's almost like Vulcan logic, right? If there's this thing called fear that is preventing you from doing things that you want to do or preventing you from doing things that are good for you, but it doesn't actually exist. It doesn't have a color. You can't look at it. You can't smell it, anything. It doesn't exist. So why the hell are you listening? Why the hell are you doing what fear wants you to do? Bam, end of story. The logic bomb hits you in the head and you're like, yeah, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of damn sense.
Right. You start to realize you're living in a control system.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the mind
kind of created. Yeah,
the mind is the ultimate system of control. Really. I mean, where do thoughts come from? Right. The thoughts come from.
Right.
Do you give thoughts to other people? Do you get thoughts from other people? Do you do you walk by something and pick up thoughts as you go along?
Right. You do. Well, I mean, you can tune into other people's fear. It's kind of funny, like I know we've all been in a room where...
That's more like intuition. That's feeling, right?
Right.
You're feeling them. But like the actual thoughts, I mean, and you've examined your own mind when you sit there. I mean, I just went through this recently. You were saying that we're not perfect. We don't have perfect lives. Hell no, brother. I mean, I just went through this recently where I realized that my mind is, it's not where it needs to be. It's taking in too much. It's spinning information around in loops, and it's not giving me the best productivity. There's just so much going on, and so
absolutely,
you've been aware of what a thought is, right? There's different than I feel like I need to be cautious of something, or I feel that guy's got a vibe, or I feel good around this person, right? But a thought is something totally different. A thought is like your own voice. It's like a version of you speaking to you in your head that only you can hear. It sounds like total insanity, really, but that's how the human mind works. And everybody's running around. I mean, go to an NFL football game and imagine if you could have everybody's thoughts turn on in here, like just the freaking clutter it would be in any public space. Go to the mall and imagine the clutter that you would feel.
Right.
That actually reminds me of something interesting. my father, before I was born, he was in a motorcycle accident, a really bad motorcycle accident. He'd started, young married couple, one kid already, and had started taking a motorcycle to work to save gas because it was during like the 70s, like, Jimmy Carter gas crisis or whatever was going on at the time. Right. So he's like, well,
because it was 25 cents a gallon or something.
Yeah, totally different universe. totally different universe, And at that time, like the cars got 8 miles per gallon.
Totally. Yeah.
Those big 350 engines and stuff. And so he's like, well, I'll save money by riding a motorcycle. He hadn't been on the motorcycle for like a month or two before somebody hit him on his way to work. They clipped his back tire and sent him headfirst into a curb. And
yeah, wow.
Just a few years ago, I asked him this question. I said, Dad, when you had that experience where you're in a car accident or a motorcycle accident, like I've heard from Mom and Grandma and some other people that you had an out-of-body experience or you had a near-death experience. Is that true? And he was like, yeah, that is true. And I was like, well, what can you tell me about that? And he was like, gee whiz, son, nobody's ever asked me about it. It happened to me. I told my parents about it, and my dad was mad and angry at me. My mom was looking at it from like a religious perspective, and she was like thought it was kind of like unholy. The doctor didn't want to know because like the doctor was like, don't talk about it. He's like, literally, the doctor told me not to mention it.
Right.
Like I never really was able to understand it, and never really got to the bottom of it, and just sort of like bottled it up. But here's what happened, right? Driving to work, somebody hits his back tire, goes headfirst into a curb, dies. For all intents and purposes, he dies. He flatlines. He's laying there on the side of the road in the median, I guess, and he says, it was really awesome. It was the most beautiful thing ever. Like I just felt so loved and so happy, and there I was, and I remember feeling this sensation of like floating up and looking down, and I was like, oh, look, it's me. Wow, I look terrible, but whatever, and there's like 30 people around me in a circle, and that, nobody knows what to do because it's obviously, what ended up happening is like he'd broken both of his legs. He's like, he was in a wheelchair for, I don't know, 9 months, a year or something like that. I mean, major damage to his body. So it's like everybody was standing around looking at me, and he's like, I remember I was looking down, I could see all these people, and I could hear all of their thoughts and all of their words at the same time. I could hear what everybody was saying at the same time, and I understood all of it, like discreetly. Wow. and as like a whole. And then he's like, there's this tunnel of light, and I start pulling up the tunnel, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This feels so good. This all is so wonderful, this tunnel of light. And then all of a sudden it was just like this voice or whatever was like, no, not time. And next thing I know, I woke up in the hospital, like tubes in me, just in the most excruciating pain I've ever been in. And that's when basically hell on earth started, because, the recovery was long.
Right.
And so, but that phenomenon of being able to hear and understand everything that's going on with minds, that speaks to some capacity that we have as human beings that we don't understand, that we don't use in our day-to-day life.
Absolutely. And I think I've read some books about near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, and I've definitely had some out-of-body experiences myself, and I know you have too, gone to other realms of existence while doing ayahuasca or while doing iboga or something. And I think it's one of those things that it takes a little bit to process those experiences. When I was doing my ayahuasca journey with the facilitator and a few friends of mine, my wife, Erin, she was at home, 30-something miles away from where I was at this house up on a mountain in Costa Rica. And she was curious, and she was like, I wonder what's going on there. I wonder what Jeff's doing right now. I wonder how it's going. And what was really crazy, and I talk about this in my book, was there was this little candle. It was the only light in the room, and it was way over by the door. And at the same time that Erin was having that thought, we put together the next day, I looked at this candle, and the candle had this one little ray of light, this one beam that started coming towards me. And it would move in, and then it would pull back a little bit, and then it would move closer, and then it would pull way back, and then all of a sudden it moved right in, right next to my face. And I was like, And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it just went, zoop, and it was gone, and it never happened again the rest of the night. And anyway, long story short, Aaron picks me up the next day and says to me, hey, around this time, and the funny thing about it is I had my watch on, and I remember the facilitator was like, you can't be wearing a watch and looking at your watch while we're doing this. And he had just taken it from me. So I knew, I glanced at the time as he was taking my watch away, and it was right about the time that this thing happened with the candle. And I realized it was Erin. It was Erin, because she said she went out and got in a meditative state in a hammock out in our backyard, and that all of a sudden she could see me in this living room of this house, and she started to describe the couch I was laying on, the blanket that was over my legs. She said at first she didn't understand why she couldn't see my legs, like, why doesn't Jeff have legs? And it turned out that I had a blanket on, and she described the pillows on the floor and how many people were there and where they were. I mean, pretty much every detail of this experience that I had, and she was there. And she wasn't even on the ayahuasca. I was, and she was having this out-of-body experience by just tuning in to her connection with me and getting her mind into a calm, meditative space. And I mean, that's what journeying is. That's what meditation is. If you can really go deep. I've had many, many journeys that I talk about in the book too, shamanic journeys with no ayahuasca, no stimulant or drug, medicine, anything of any kind, and just with a drum, gone on these amazing, soul flights where you leave your body and you're in a completely different place. And I believe we do that very often when we're young. Young children, they call it daydreaming, they call it all these different things, but really they're out of body experiences. They're people exploring the or what's another word they use for that? Astral travel.
Astral projection, astral travel, right.
And I think we all do that. When we're young, we do it more frequently, and then we get more rigid. We get in this reality. If a lot of it is a fear-based reality, of, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you have to pay attention. Oh, stop daydreaming. And, it becomes a limiting experience. And that was the thing that came to my mind when we started talking about fear and fear-based decision-making or living in fear is you really limit your life experience. You limit what you will allow in, and you limit what you will allow yourself out to do.
Yeah, it's hard for me to conceptualize it as a limitation. It seems, I tend to look at it in terms of not being limited by fear, but by the polar opposite of that. How can you live your life in a way that's unlimited? Right. So
right, but
fear and everything isn't part of that puzzle. But I want to back up and say something about this. You were talking about the candle in your ceremony, right?
Right.
The Bwiti say that there's, I think, 2, maybe 3 natural portals to the spirit dimension in this world, and one of them is fire. The other one is like a mirror, your reflection, being able to look at yourself. So whenever it's really important, whenever you do ceremonies with any powerful spirit medicine or any spiritual ceremony, it's important to have fire as there to protect you. But the fire itself is a portal, and so when we're doing fire ceremonies for Bwiti, when we're taught, we actually introduce ourselves and talk to the fire, and then we look deeply into the fire, and you can transport yourself into different points of your life, into different realities and stuff by using the fire as a portal. And so it's interesting hearing you talk about, how that actually opens something up between you and your wife. But there's something real to that. I mean, there's a spiritual dimension to fire that, it's put that on the list of things that science can't explain, but
there's something very, very real about it. Because another one of the chapters in my book, I'm, getting these healings from this shaman healer guy, and I don't talk about this in the book, so I'll talk about it now. He was training me how to do healings and to do some, work on other people that are at distance. And he was talking about how he always has these people light a candle wherever they are. And I was like, why, Eugene, why are you always having them light a candle? I don't get it. Like, what's the big deal about the candle? And he said, I can travel to them through the light, so when they light the candle, it doesn't have to be this giant flame, this little candle.
Right.
I can put myself in their hospital room. He had a good friend of his who had throat cancer and a gigantic tumor in his throat. And they were about to do this surgery on him the next day. And his wife, the friend's wife, called Eugene and said, can you please try to do something for him? And he told him to light a candle at this certain time and that he'd be there. And he said he described the hospital room to her, the same kind of thing Aaron did. He said, yeah, he's in this room and, the curtains are this color and there's a couch over here. And she was like, how do you know all that? And he was like, I came through the candle and I saw him. And the most amazing thing was that the next day when they were going to do the surgery, the tumor in his throat had like decreased by something insane. It was like 75% reduction in this thing. And the guy was going to lose like his voice, like forever, never be able to talk again because it was all in his, voice box, and his vocal cords were all involved in it. And so they decided to postpone the surgery and do some other alternative treatments and stuff. And anyway, in the long run, the tumor went away and the guy never had this invasive surgery and lost his voice.
Yeah, I think the most commonly used term for that is astral projection, right?
Right.
Like you're able to break free of your material consciousness and project that out into the cosmos, right? It's kind of like with the Bwiti medicine with Iboga. I mean, you can describe it as pretty accurately as astral projection, right? I mean, you go into a trance,
right?
In that trance, the universe becomes available to you inside your mind, right? So you have access to literally. I described it to one of my facilitators during the journey one time. He was like, "Well, how do you feel? Do you see anything?" And I was like, "Yeah, I see everything all at once and right now." Which is kind of like what my father was going through with the near-death experience, right? Everything, all that, right. and it all makes sense. Like you can understand, like your perception is so expanded that
right.
You can actually use all of this information. And so, like with the Iboga, for example, like you can go in and go back to moments of your life and relive memories that you have. You can go memory surfing. You can go into the future. You can go back in time. You can go to any alternate parallel reality and see how things played out, how they will play out, how they might have played out. It's pretty fascinating that we have the ability to do that. And yet at the same time, just walking around in the world, taking care of your errands and going, it's like you realize that most people have never had experiences like this. I think something really changes within a person once they've experienced something like this. Their perception of reality is, inexorably altered forever. Right. Forever.
And when you're walking around, okay, this is the funniest part, right? We still have to walk around, drive around, move around, and do these thing called life, right? We still have to pick kids up from school, drop them off, feed them dinner and breakfast and lunch and all these things. But in what energy are you doing it in? And that's one of the things I talk to a lot with my clients is, the meditation becomes your practice all day long. Right. Forgiveness doesn't become something you do at night when you decide to pray or whatever it is. It's something that you're constantly involved in. I've talked before about forgiveness in the moment, and it's when things happen and people react and you don't be the reactor in life, be the actor, be the one who's the wise sage, find your inner sage and live from a place of forgiveness in the moment where, people are going to judge you and people are going to be rude to you and people are going to, kneel down for the national anthem or whatever the stupid thing is that you're so freaking worried about. you can forgive those people, man. They're still amazing souls, they're still and they have the right to express themselves, and if you can live in that energy and treat life as a meditation, man, it becomes everything, and everyone becomes a teacher.
Well,
it's really amazing.
This is really important. People like to kick around the term enlightenment, right? Right. as if there is some state of permanent bliss or something that you can attain that makes life easy and wonderful and manageable and
until you get a flat tire.
Until you get a flat tire, right? And so people use this term a lot. People that sell spiritual whatever, this or that. I'll teach you how to achieve enlightenment. The story that I like the most regarding enlightenment, because it rings true for me, is that I read this story once, an old Chinese tale, right? This young man, eager young man, whatever, he's seeking enlightenment, so he's, he goes off to this temple and meditates for 2 years or whatever. And, he's done. And he's like, well, I don't know. Was that it? Am I enlightened? I don't know. I don't feel like I got there, Well, and they said, well, go see this guru or try this practice. So he goes and does this or that, and he pursues it as far as it'll go and realizes that he doesn't feel like he's enlightened yet. And then this goes on and whatever. And finally somebody says, oh yeah, you can actually, like, the way to get enlightenment is you've got to reach the top of that mountain up there. So that big, whatever mountain, you got to go to the top of the mountain. Enlightenment is there. You got to get there.
Right.
And so he's like, wow, that's a big journey. That's a long way to go to get to enlightenment, but that's what I need. My life needs enlightenment. I'm going for it. I got to have this. I got to have enlightenment, so I'm doing it. So he sets off up this mountain. Harrowing journey, battling the elemental forces of nature and all that and stuff. And as he's exhausted and climbing his way up to the top, sees this little old man walking down. Finally, the first person he's seen on the mountain, this little frail old man, and this old man's, he's got one of those things over his shoulders, and he's balancing water buckets and whatever, and he's walking down the mountain, and he's all hunched over under the weight of his load, and he's like stumbling down the mountain, doing his thing. And this guy's like, excuse me, sir, in Chinese, of course.
Right.
And he's like I want to know, is enlightenment up there? And the old man looks at him and realizes what he's talking about, and so he instantly sets down his load, stands upright, erect, perfectly straight, and he says, yes. And then he hunches his load back down, and he's like, where are you going? He hunches his load back on himself. He bends back over, and the young guy's like, where are you going now? He's like, you're enlightened. He's like, must chop wood, must carry water. Like, don't matter, man. You can get to the mountain, you can get to the top of the mountaintop, but you're still going to have to chop wood and carry water like everyone else.
Reminds me of Herman Hesse, Siddhartha, the whole Brahmin story, and same kind of thing, that you can always be, this whole thing, like much like this podcast, is about the journey, right? There is no end destination. There is no enlightenment. There is no, goal that's going to get you there. It just is, and it's not to keep bringing up the same thing over and over again, but if you live in fear, if you live in self-doubt, if you live in this box, you really do hold yourself back, and that's what I meant earlier when I said, you limit your experience, because I've had a lot of people, I still every day do here, say, oh man, I would love to live in Costa Rica, and fill in XYZ reason that they can't do it. And I could have done the same thing for myself. I had a lot of naysayers. You have a walker, you have a wheelchair, you have muscular dystrophy, you're disabled, you can't go do that. And I just keep doing the things that people tell me I can't. So, it's all your choice. We've talked about choice before, and it really is. It's your choice. It's your life. It's your experience. And, Barack Obama and Donald Trump and all these names, they're just names, they're just people. And Donald Trump isn't consulting you about what you like, and hey, did you like what I just said about those sons of bitches? And Barack Obama never called me to ask me what I wanted in his healthcare plan, So, the point is, live your life, make your decisions, make the best choices for you and your family, because Donald Trump and Barack Obama and whoever the next president is, they're not going to consult you before they make their choices, and don't live in fear, take the risk. The rewards are abundant, and like that little Chihuahua right there. I remember when we had our little long hair sucker, and you were like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want that dog. It's something I'm going to have to keep. And now look at all the rewards she gives you. Yeah, the kids.
She's about to go crazy barking here any second. Right. I'm telling you, I could feel the vibe.
See?
But,
can you plant that?
Yeah, but just to wrap this up, because we are hitting our... Hold on, let me go. Chloe, sweetie. Last thing I wanted to say, you mentioned the podcast, and I'm really starting to kind of come to think of it. Hold on, I got to deal with this. Come here.
Come to think of it as just an open forum and a place for us to express our ideas and share with people what's on our minds. And
top professional level podcasting here with the Chihuahua. But what I was going to say to wrap this up was that I'm really starting to kind of look at this podcast as a sort of an open-ended mastermind on personal transformation. I think if I approach it like that, as just kind of like, this is what we're masterminding on this time, today, whatever, that's really going to be the most fulfilling for me, and it's going to be projecting the things that I want most to project into the world. So with that, Mr. Jeff Anthony, do you have any closing comments on this episode of Redesigning Reality, the podcast?
Just, reinforcing the fact that, take the risk, It's always worth it. Even if you fail, you're going to have so many lessons and so many awesome things that you can share in the future about the things that you did and tried. And and peace out.
All right, man. Peace out. Well, we'll catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in, and we're out. Bye.
You've been listening to Redesigning Reality with Jeff Anthony and Dylan Charles.
Nunca voy